Hot in the past 2 months and dried through microwave drying alcohol first to first now.
Excuse me, John, how do you zoom this a little bit?
And closest to me, black button in town.
Up here?
John. But I've gotten some cherry bowls with the cherry. This is a yolk from one of them. I've done a little repair work. I'm starting to learn how to do that. Put a nice bottom on it. Maple bowls we got from his neighbor, was a few houses down. They cut down the maple tree and he just asked if we could take some of it. The hickory came from somebody here. He was kind enough to give us bricks. The one that brought it. But I got some beautiful sections out of it, and that's one of the bowls that came from it. And this is a butternut tree that we got from Winnebago. An elder woman had just fouled, but we chopped it up. Got some neat pieces. And I got a mark on my arm.
This is one of those tips and tricks.
Yeah.
The tip is, don't let this happen again.
Yeah. I have a shopsmith, which is really almost too big to be doing these bowls, but I got a walnut one end about that big by about that deep. So to stabilize it, I left the centerpiece, and I've got a 60-degree bevel on my bowl gouge. So there comes a point when you're doing the inside of the spindle, and you come to the mouth of it, that you're not going to be able to ride the bevel. And so I turned it just a little bit to catch it to start cutting, and it just, when you wanted to go in and get underneath the inside, and this was from the outside rub of the bowl.
And also he broke his tool rest.
Yeah, the third one in the shopsmith. This is when I started trying to figure out. That's my first video right there.
Good for you. Very nice.
But most of the stuff, I mean, Terry has just been helping me out quite a bit. Getting the bottoming finishes and figuring out how to epoxy and different stuff like that. That's about it. This is where I'm at. I mean, I don't consider this stuff to be as beautiful as some of the stuff people bring in here, but this is the reality of it. This is where I'm at as a turner, you know, the quality of work I'm able to do. And I'm hoping in a year to be as good as some of the other turners in here. And I like free wood.
I might add, John's really come a long ways, but I want you to tell him how you dry your wood. Of course, when we go out and cut wood, most of the time it's wet, and I paint the ends and let it dry, or put it in my kiln, but tell him how you...
These were all soaked in alcohol overnight, completely submerged. Then they were taken out and they'll dry for a couple hours, and then I stick them in the microwave. 2 minutes at a time, you take it out. You don't want it to be too hot to handle, but it needs to be heated up. And you do that 40 or 50 times. Eventually it's dry.
They can take a wet piece of wood and then in less than 2 days have it dried to be able to turn.
But another thing I learned too is, with Terry, I've cut wood. I'm sure everybody does this first time. I didn't put no paint on it, and it cracked out. I can't use that, you know. I had to turn it into firewood, and then we got the maple. These bowls, these are a couple chunks I was able to get out of it, but I even painted the ends of that, but I didn't put thick coats on it, and that cracked out real bad, so I had to saw it down smaller. And now I'm to the point where I'm using garbage bags. As soon as they're cut, I put it in a plastic garbage bag because, one, it'll take twice as long to dry. If you put it in paper bags, it'll dry faster, but the longer it takes to dry, the less cracks you have. So ultimately, if I put it in that plastic bag and I don't use it for 4 years, it'll be a nice dry blank. But if I want to take it out next week, at least I'm not dealing with a bunch of cracks at the end, you know. It's still a fresh piece of wood.
Right. The thing with the only danger, and this isn't really a danger, but the issue with garbage bags, if you put them in and leave it for an extended period, 4 years, is they will get mold.
It will.
Oh,
Or
yeah. It'll
some
mold
spalding
and
will take
spalds.
place.
Now, spalding isn't always bad, but I mean, it's just an issue. So.
John's in too big a hurry, it won't last 4 years.
Right. If you leave it in a garbage bag for 6 months, then it's going to spoil.
Now, I was watching a YouTube video and I thought it was very neat, but this guy was making a bowl that was this big by this deep, and he roughed it out and he put it in a paper bag. He found a sack that big, and took it out after a year, and it had developed a crack from the top of the rim about 3/4 down. So what he did was, and this, he was progressive thought on this, but he took a huge band, one that was nylon, so he could get half the strap over the top of the lip, and he wrenched it and he put it in a plastic bag. When he pulled it out 6 months, the crack had completely healed except for about 1 inch at the bottom. The crack was so intense at the bottom, you could get your fingernail in it, but the crack had healed all the way up the side. And the next step he was going to do is, if he ever saw it again, is he would pull it out and glue blocks halfway up, so when he wrenched it, it wouldn't slip off the bottom of it, to see if he could heal that whole crack. But it's incredible. You could not see the crack there after he had that band around it for 6 months in a plastic bag.
You tried it before you rough turn it?
It was after the rough turn.
No, I mean you, when you're doing with the alcohol and
Yeah, right after
rough
rough
turn it first. You rough turn it first.
And I keep the process pretty moving along, because if you let it sit on a counter on your lathe for a few minutes, but I have noticed even in microwave drying, now that I've dealt with this, each bowl 50 times, that they do develop cracks and then they do heal themselves, some of them. I did a Myrtle bowl one time that the whole thing was 1,000 cracks, and after the drying process, there was maybe 1 or 2 of the hairline ones that you could tell afterwards. But in all these, to some degree, have a little crack in them.
Well, you're moving forward, that's fabulous. And I'm delighted you brought it in. This shouldn't be all masters.
I guess you guys can see I got some repair work going on that. That one was a piece of bark that, I didn't know this, but on yokes, they'll fold the bark right inside the tree and grow over it. Yep, and that's what it did. This was all bark in here until I got down to this point at the bottom, but this is where it continued out the side. Just sprung it out.
Hey, John, is that denatured alcohol or rubbing alcohol?
Denatured alcohol.
Denatured alcohol?
And all denatured alcohol means is they add chemicals to it so you can't drink it, and therefore it's not taxable like regular alcohol.
Oh, okay. So you can use your drinking alcohol.
The idea is the pores fill up with the alcohol and force the water.
Stuff I get given to me on Coors Light.
Well, thank you, John. Next. Oh, him.
Those that are at the picnic, this is the block of wood that I started turning on the big lathe. And this one, this walnut, as you can tell, it's not quite dry enough yet. It's about 10 or 12%. But this is turned wet and no drying other than throwing in a paper lawn waste bag because it's big enough. So there are, 2 or 3 thicknesses of paper in there, something like that. I just threw it in there, and then this morning I just turned the bottom off of it because it still had, it was still rough. I had sawed it off, but then I just threw it in the bag after that, no sanding or anything. And just sanded it up a little bit, but it's still not quite dry enough to sand right. But
That won't work.
it maybe works slightly, but it's not very much.
Well, it's end grade turning.
Yeah, this is end grade now, that's not a bowl, so. But bowls, I've turned some bowls that are, this is a little under a 1/4 inch, probably average. Bowls that are about a 1/4 inch, and depends on the wood. Some of them are, they're going to wrap up like a candy wrapper, but some of them, they don't work very much. And then,
Especially with end grade turning.
yeah, but even a bowl, it depends on the wood and what kind of grain you've got in that. But I don't know. Those I think you just about got a rough turn and then dry it and finish them. But none of these bases, I haven't turned any of them rough. I don't know how you do it because you need to have, a big thick base at the bottom, and that cracks every time. The piece that's left on the faceplate when you start this thing off after you cut it off, if you leave that on there, in a half a day, the cracks will be started already on that.
That still has a pith in the bottom of it? You don't have a problem with that cracking out?
Well, it's like I said, it's 10 or 12% right now. It's good. I just got an LED meter, so it's not real accurate. And you have better luck if you can get the pith exactly in the center. You can see that one isn't. If they're way off center, then you do get quite a bit of warping at the top would be warped up too. But this thing, my lathe's kind of big, so it's got a number 4 Morris taper lathe machine on the end of this. This is how I end up holding it with some cork on the end of this into the into the lathe like that with a center over here to turn the bottom off of it. And then, if this isn't long enough, I stick a chuck in there or an extended Morris taper 2-to-2 extender, so you can get any length you really want. And if you got a number 2 Morris taper, just get one of those extenders. That'll get you out probably 4 or 5 inches, and then you can put a chuck in that or another extension and then put something on it. Other people, I saw somewhere, I can't remember where I saw it, where the lathe is, it doesn't roll out. But they take and put a piece of like 5/8 rod, just steel rod, in the headstock, into your chuck of some sort. Then put a pulley, an aluminum pulley at the end of it, and then machine that pulley flat, put a piece of cork on it. Just one of the cheap aluminum pulleys that you just put a set screw in, and then leave it on there. Don't take it off, because once you get it squared up, it'll be good. And then you can slide that back and forth inside your chuck to get whatever depth you need to either be on your bowl, because you can do the same thing with a bowl. Especially if you got a bowl that's this deep, if you hold it out there, they kind of flop in the breeze. If you put something like this in here, then this is just a collar here that's on the shaft that you can slide up and down with one set screw. And then that at least keeps it from flopping around. The other one of those things, I don't know if anybody else has made, I'm sure you've made these before, but this just goes in my chuck. So I needed to grab a 3/8 dowel rod for something I was turning. I can't remember what it was anymore, but I got a couple of these for different sizes. Sort of like what I think it was Terry brought in the cross cut on the plastic for his eggs. Same kind of concept. This is just for whatever diameter you're working on.
Start off with a little necklace. I made this a couple of years ago, but I made a lot of different inlay things. I did it with one of those offset jigs, but not with this one. It's an Axminster brand. You can find it in the woodturner's cabinet. But anyway, it indexes 12 positions and about 5 positions in and out. So we can do different designs with it. That's about all I've done with those inlays. That's 39 pieces of wood. And every one's a different kind of wood. That was a challenge. I made a lot of birdhouses. I just finished this one at 5 o'clock today.